Hello, my name is Dr. Carl Kutz, and I've been on the teaching faculty here at Multnomah for several decades. I am excited to have you taking this course in Hebrew language. My own journey in Hebrew language began after I left Bible college. At the time, I didn't really think it significant for me to take languages because of the direction that I was headed. Yet after I ended up in ministry, I realized that I lacked some of the essential tools that I needed for understanding the biblical text. I was actually working verse by verse through the book of Isaiah and began to realize that as I was looking at the commentaries, I didn't understand some of the discussions that they were having. And so I undertook to begin learning the Hebrew language. And as I did, I fell in love with it. At the time, I memorized every form. I memorized every paradigm, put them on flashcards so that I could work through them. And then as I realized that my interests were taking me into a desire to teach in the future, I moved on to graduate school. And while I was there, something interesting happened. There was a colleague of mine who was also finishing up his PhD as I was beginning, who worked in historical linguistics. He was doing both his PhD in Hebrew and a minor in the linguistics department. And as I read some of the work that he was doing in conjunction with his master's degree, I realized that he was reflecting concepts that greatly simplified all of the rote memorization that I had done in order to become proficient in Hebrew. And at that point, I realized that if I could incorporate that into a Hebrew grammar, if I could use it in my teaching, I would help students minimize how much they needed to memorize and give them an understanding of Hebrew that would last them much longer than the typical kind of learning that happens. So as you go through this grammar, one of the things that you will find is that we have embedded a significant amount of historical linguistics into the background. At times this may seem a little bit overwhelming, but bear with us. We have a particular objective in mind, and these concepts, which in many cases you wouldn't experience until you were in a master's or PhD program in Hebrew, can actually be communicated on a fundamental level that will very significantly change your learning experience. So try to follow along as best you can. They are introduced with an awareness that in many cases you will not fully realize the significance of the concepts that you are learning until either later in the grammar or even in the second year as you review what you learned in first year. We are laying the bedrock, and we will reiterate these things over and over and over again as a way of exposing you to them so that they become inculcated into every aspect of your learning and will transform the learning experience. So as you go through, recognize that there are going to be a lot of advanced concepts. There are going to be details that we think are important for you to be exposed to, but that you do not necessarily have to be able to replicate. So at the beginning and end of each chapter, there will be focus points that enable you to figure out what is going to be most significant for you to take away. The rest, you need to just be able to follow the discussion. So don't assume that you understand if you still have questions. Don't minimize your own experience. Take charge of your own learning. And if you're not sure that it's clear to you, or if you have questions, make sure that you ask those. We want you to be able to find understanding, even if it can't be something that you would be able to pass on to somebody else. At least be able to follow the line of thought. Make sure that as you begin this process also, you figure out what your learning style is. Some of you are going to find that as you read through the grammar, it doesn't really sink in for you, and you find that it's not really that helpful that you read through the grammar before you have the lecture. You may find that it's much more beneficial for you to hear it talked through and then to read through the chapter in order to consolidate what you have learned. Others of you may find that it actually works in reverse. You have an affinity for languages, you kind of understand concepts, and you find it better to try and fill your mind with as much of the material as possible so that as we talk through the lectures, it kind of shifts into place and creates a cohesive whole for you. So regardless of which personality type you are, what type of learning style you have, accommodate that to the way in which you approach this course. Either read the grammar first and then listen to the lecture, or listen to the lecture, then read the grammar first. What's important is that you assimilate the material in a way that best fits for you.